Have you ever felt that life has betrayed you? That no matter how hard you try, everything seems to collapse around you, leaving you in a place so low it feels impossible to rise again. Most people see rock bottom as punishment, a failure of character, or a sign that they are unworthy of success or love. Society teaches that if you fall, you must have done something wrong, and that your worth is measured by your ability to avoid pain. But what if that interpretation is completely wrong? What if hitting the bottom is not a curse, but a gift, a hidden hand guiding you toward clarity, growth, and a deeper understanding of life? The world insists that progress is linear, that suffering is a mistake, and that we must always be moving upward. Yet those moments of collapse, despair, or profound emptiness often contain more truth than any victory or accolade could offer. When everything falls away, the illusions we cling to, the need for control, the pursuit of approval, the endless distractions are stripped bare, leaving only the raw materials of our real selves. And in this emptiness, we find an unusual kind of freedom, the quiet space to see ourselves and the world with eyes unclouded by expectation or fear. To the man who has reached rock bottom, this may feel cruel, unfair, or isolating. But consider this: every collapse, every failure, every moment when life seems unbearable is an invitation to wake up. It is a signal from the universe or from God that something must change, that the life you have been pursuing is not the life you were meant to live. And in that pause, in that hollow, aching space, there is a chance to shed pretense, to confront truth, and to begin again with awareness rather than ignorance. It is here, at the edge of despair, that the seeds of transformation quietly take root. Before we move deeper into this revelation, take a moment to reflect on your own life. How many times have you wished to skip the pain, to avoid the collapse, to stay comfortably afloat in illusion? And what if letting yourself truly fall, letting the bottom arrive, is the exact act that will awaken your strength, your clarity, and your connection to what is meaningful? By subscribing, sharing, and commenting, you help this reflection reach other men who may be silently struggling, reminding them that hitting bottom is not the end, but the beginning of a journey toward depth and truth. Before the moment of hitting rock bottom, life often feels like a constant scramble to maintain appearances, to keep pace with expectations, and to chase after fleeting forms of validation. You may have believed that success, recognition, or control over circumstances could shield you from suffering, that your efforts alone could secure stability and meaning. Every action, every decision seems aimed at preventing collapse, as though the ladder of life must be climbed without pause or failure. Yet beneath this frantic striving, there exists a subtle, persistent tension, a quiet anxiety that whispers, warning that the foundations of your world are not as solid as you imagined. The higher you climb, the more precarious it becomes, and the illusions that once gave comfort now act as blinders, preventing you from seeing the true nature of your existence. Then comes the fall. The collapse may be sudden or slow, catastrophic or gradual, but its effect is the same. The structures you relied on crumble, revealing the fragility of what you thought was life. And in this moment, there is a shocking clarity. The habits, routines, and dependencies that once defined you are exposed as constructs, not reality. You are confronted with a raw, unfiltered experience of life itself, stripped of distraction, ego, and pretense. What seemed like punishment is actually revelation. What feels like failure is a moment of awakening. In the space left behind by loss, there is room for insight, for discernment, and for the cultivation of a strength that can only be forged in the crucible of adversity. Externally, others may react with confusion, pity, or judgment. Friends and colleagues might fail to understand why you seem broken, distant, or strange, misinterpreting your pain as weakness or incompetence. Yet these perceptions, though persistent, hold no power over the transformation occurring within. The very descent that appears destructive is teaching lessons that no praise or success ever could. You begin to see patterns that were invisible before, the compulsions that dictated your behavior, the subtle agreements you made with society to measure your worth by external markers, and the ways in which fear had kept you from confronting your own truth. Every expectation abandoned, every attachment loosened, becomes a step toward liberation, even if it is invisible to the world around you. In this stage, suffering is no longer merely endured. It becomes a lens through which reality can be understood. The fall recontextualizes what once seemed important and trivializes what once seemed urgent. What you thought you needed, control, approval, safety, reveals itself as secondary, and the qualities that truly matter, awareness, presence, resilience, emerge with startling clarity. Hitting rock bottom is not the annihilation of life, but the unveiling of its essence. In the silence of collapse, the man begins to recognize that the life he feared losing is not measured by circumstance, but by his own conscious engagement with reality. As the fall deepens, the world around you responds in ways that often feel alienating. People may look at you with concern, confusion, or even disdain, labeling your struggles as weakness or failure. Friends may distance themselves, colleagues may whisper, and family may try to steer you back toward the path they understand, insisting that you regain what was lost rather than allowing you to discover what is truly yours. Yet this external pressure, though familiar, begins to lose its hold. You realize that their perceptions are rooted in expectation, fear, and habit, not in the reality of who you are becoming. What looks like isolation is actually a space for recalibration. What seems like abandonment is actually the universe clearing the field so that your awareness can expand without interference. Within this tension between appearance and essence, a new form of power quietly emerges. You may appear distant, broken, or unreachable, yet internally, your clarity is growing. Every decision, every moment of introspection begins to align with truth rather than obligation. You are no longer motivated by the desire to impress, compete, or conform, but by the pursuit of authenticity, even when it is uncomfortable or misunderstood. This tension between how you appear to the world and the grounding you feel within is not conflict. It is the shaping of resilience, a sharpening of discernment, and the birth of a confidence that cannot be taken away because it is anchored in lived experience, not approval. This is also the stage where familiar concepts take on new meanings. Weakness is revealed as the fertile soil of growth. Emptiness becomes the room for insight, and loss transforms into liberation. The collapse you feared teaches lessons that no success could provide. It clarifies priorities, dissolves illusions, and illuminates the difference between what is essential and what is trivial. Each discomfort, each pang of doubt is a guidepost, drawing attention to attachments, habits, and fears that had silently governed your life. And as this perspective deepens, you begin to see that the world's measures, status, wealth, recognition, are distractions, while the measures that matter, presence, integrity, clarity, cannot be awarded or revoked. They exist inherently, waiting to be claimed through honest engagement with life itself. The external reactions, while seemingly negative, serve a paradoxical purpose. They highlight the gap between appearance and essence, showing you how much of life had previously been shaped by others' expectations. And in stepping fully into the space created by rock bottom, you are no longer controlled by the gaze of the crowd. Instead, you inhabit a life where your choices are deliberate, your awareness is unclouded, and your actions resonate with a quiet strength that commands no attention but exerts immense influence. The tension, the misperception, and the isolation are not punishments. They are the tools through which you are forged into a man capable of living freely, fully, and authentically. As you begin to settle into the depth of rock bottom, the world itself begins to transform before your eyes, though in ways invisible to others. Suffering, which once felt like a burden or a mark of inadequacy, begins to reveal itself as a teacher. Every ache, every moment of despair, is not punishment but illumination, showing you the layers of attachment, expectation, and illusion that once dictated your life. The very experiences that seemed unbearable provide clarity. They strip away pretense, peel back the layers of ego, and force you to confront the raw truth of your existence. It is here, in the stillness of surrender, that you begin to recognize the essential difference between what life demands of you and what your own nature requires. The collapse is not destruction. It is an awakening to a deeper, quieter wisdom that cannot be accessed in comfort or control. Desire, too, changes its meaning in this space. Once, it propelled you outward, driving you toward validation, approval, and the accumulation of achievements. Now desire becomes introspective, subtle and precise, guiding you toward experiences, people, and moments that resonate with authenticity rather than expectation. What once felt like restlessness transforms into discernment, a selective attention that allows you to recognize what truly nourishes the self. The cravings that once distracted and enslaved you lose their grip, replaced by a quiet alignment with what is genuinely valuable. Even the fear of failure, once overwhelming, becomes a compass. It points not to weakness, but to areas where growth is required, revealing the truths you had previously avoided in the pursuit of safety or image. Externally, reactions continue, but they no longer dictate your experience. Friends, family, and colleagues may struggle to understand the calmness, detachment, or quiet power you now exude. Some may call it arrogance, some may pity it, and others may simply avoid it, uncomfortable with the honesty reflected in your presence. Yet their perceptions are irrelevant to the transformation unfolding within. You are no longer bound by the invisible agreements that once determined your actions. The world's measure of value has lost its authority over you. Instead, you act in accordance with your own understanding, guided by clarity, integrity, and a grounded sense of purpose. The paradox is clear. The more distant you appear, the more fully you are alive, fully present, and fully in command of yourself. Even the concepts of weakness, emptiness, and loss are reinterpreted in profound ways. Weakness, the world says, is surrender. Yet here, it becomes the gateway to resilience, the acknowledgement of limitations that enables genuine growth. Emptiness, once feared, is the space in which insight, clarity, and presence emerge. Loss, which seemed like deprivation, becomes liberation, a shedding of attachments that never truly belonged to you. The man who hits rock bottom discovers that what appeared as suffering is in truth a crucible, shaping him into a figure of awareness, independence, and subtle strength. This is the stage where the interior life, the clarity, the freedom, the refined sense of self begins to radiate outward, transforming every action, every relationship, and every decision with a quiet, unassailable power. As the lessons of rock bottom settle in, their consequences ripple outward into every aspect of life. You begin to notice a subtle shift in perception. Situations that once provoked anxiety or fear now arrive with clarity, as if life itself is offering guidance rather than threat. The collapse that once seemed destructive becomes a lens through which the true nature of relationships, responsibilities, and ambitions can be discerned. Tasks that once felt burdensome now carry purpose because they are chosen rather than compelled. Decisions that once required constant validation now emerge from a quiet, grounded clarity. The higher you once climbed in pursuit of recognition, the more fragile your foundation became. Now, having descended into the depths, you find that your stability comes not from status, but from alignment with your own principles and awareness. Externally, the transformation is subtle but perceptible. Friends, colleagues, and family may notice the change and misinterpret it. Your calm may be mistaken for detachment, your thoughtfulness for hesitation, and your independence for arrogance. Yet these reactions, while understandable, no longer shape your inner life. The contrast between appearance and essence grows more pronounced. What others perceive as distance is actually grounded presence. What they see as weakness is the strength of a man who no longer participates in illusion. And what they label as strangeness is the clarity that arises from having faced the abyss and returned with understanding. In this tension, you discover that life is not a ladder to be climbed for approval, but a field to be inhabited with awareness, where each step is guided by truth rather than expectation. The internal consequences deepen as well. Solitude, once feared, becomes an ally. The emptiness that once felt unbearable transforms into the canvas upon which self-understanding and intentional living are painted. The collapse reveals where attachments, compulsions, and fears once controlled you, and as these patterns loosen their grip, a freedom emerges that cannot be granted externally. Desire, which once propelled frantic striving toward approval or validation, now guides selectively, drawing attention to what truly matters rather than what appears urgent or necessary. Even failures and setbacks are recontextualized. They are no longer evidence of inadequacy, but signposts showing where adjustment, insight, or courage is required. Each difficulty compounds clarity, each loss sharpens discernment, and each moment of solitude strengthens resilience. This stage also illuminates the reinterpretation of power, success, and achievement. Power is no longer about influence, control, or dominance over others. It is the capacity to act in alignment with truth, free from the compulsion to impress or conform. Success is no longer measured by recognition, wealth, or status, but by fidelity to one's principles, depth of awareness, and the ability to navigate life with presence and intention. Achievements, once markers of validation, are now understood as secondary, while the mastery of self, the cultivation of clarity, and the capacity to live fully become the true metrics of accomplishment. The transformation that begins within the silence of rock bottom extends outward. It reshapes relationships, work, and daily choices in ways that appear ordinary on the surface, but are profound in their depth and effect. Gradually, life begins to flow in layers of refinement. Every interaction is more intentional, every decision carries weight, and every choice is filtered through the lens of awareness. Distractions fade, compulsions weaken, and the energy once spent on appearances and climbing is redirected toward presence, alignment, and authentic engagement. The man who once measured life by the ladder of status now inhabits the world differently, not by force, not by display, not by performance, but by living in resonance with his own understanding. And in this process, the invisible strength of clarity, resilience, and grounded power accumulates, manifesting in ways that cannot be measured externally but are unmistakably real, transforming life into an ongoing exercise of authenticity, freedom, and quiet mastery. As this transformation reaches its deepest layers, the man who once feared hitting rock bottom now stands in a state of rare clarity and freedom. Life once experienced as a series of pressures, obligations, and comparisons now unfolds with a rhythm aligned to his own awareness. Where he once scrambled to maintain appearances or chase fleeting approval, he now moves with quiet intention, each action resonating with authenticity. The collapse that once felt like the end becomes the foundation for a life lived in full presence, where decisions are guided not by fear, but by insight, and each moment, no matter how small, is inhabited with awareness. This is the point where the lessons of rock bottom are no longer theoretical. They have become lived, embodied knowledge, shaping every thought, movement, and interaction. Externally, reactions continue, but they no longer disturb the equilibrium he has cultivated. Colleagues, friends, and family may still misinterpret his calm as detachment or think his independence is arrogance. Yet these perceptions are irrelevant to the man who has faced the abyss and returned grounded. The tension between how he appears and who he truly is sharpens his understanding of human behavior. He sees the invisible agreements, the subtle social hierarchies, and the compulsions that govern most lives. And by refusing to participate in these illusions, he does not isolate himself. Rather, he inhabits a space of autonomy and integrity. What seemed like separation becomes alignment. What appeared to be loss is revealed as liberation. And what looked like weakness is the source of a quiet, unshakable power that radiates through every aspect of his life. The reinterpretation of fundamental concepts reaches its fullest expression at this stage. Loneliness, once feared, is now recognized as a vehicle for insight and depth. Silence, once dreaded, becomes the medium through which clarity emerges. Failure, once perceived as catastrophe, is understood as guidance, showing the pathways that were never meant to be pursued. Desire, stripped of compulsion, becomes precise and directed, pointing toward what genuinely matters rather than what distracts or impresses. Even the social ladder that once seemed essential is now recognized as a construct whose authority no longer applies. In this space, the man begins to live according to a personal metric, defined not by accolades or recognition, but by alignment with his own truth, and the internal consequences of this alignment unfold in profound and subtle ways. Layer by layer, these transformations alter the texture of life itself. Relationships deepen or dissolve according to authenticity rather than obligation. Work and creativity are pursued for their own resonance rather than external reward. Daily choices, once driven by fear, habit, or expectation, are now informed by clarity, presence, and intention. Challenges, setbacks, and discomforts are met with resilience, not panic, because he understands their role in teaching, refining, and grounding. The man becomes both observer and participant, experiencing life with awareness rather than distraction, choice rather than compulsion, and strength rather than attachment. The impact is cumulative, an invisible layering of freedom, power, and insight that grows each day, unseen by many but unmistakable to those who have observed the subtleties of his presence. Finally, the man who has hit rock bottom realizes the true paradox. The collapse that once terrified him was never a threat, but a gift. The bottom, once perceived as the end, is now understood as a beginning, a point from which clarity, power, and freedom emerge. Every failure, every loss, every moment of despair was part of a process, a divine orchestration designed to awaken, to strip away illusions, and to reveal the essence of life itself. And in this realization, a profound peace settles in. He is no longer chasing, grasping, or fearing, but inhabiting a life that is unshakably grounded, fully present, and deeply alive, prepared to engage the world on his own terms with awareness and integrity. In the end, what once looked like rock bottom, the collapse, the loss, the despair, is revealed as the doorway to clarity. The man who thought he had failed discovers that he has been freed. What seemed like weakness becomes strength. What appeared as emptiness transforms into the space where awareness and wisdom take root. And what was perceived as loss turns into liberation, allowing him to live unbound by expectation or illusion. The descent that terrified him was never a punishment, but a carefully constructed invitation to awaken, to confront truth, and to reclaim life on his own terms. Every shattered assumption, every unmet expectation, every painful moment has been a teacher, guiding him toward a deeper, more grounded existence. Externally, others may still misinterpret his calm as detachment, his independence as arrogance, or his refusal to chase status as passivity. Yet internally, he is fully aligned, fully present, and fully alive. He has discovered that life is not measured by accumulation, applause, or position, but by the depth of engagement with reality, the courage to live authentically, and the clarity that comes from facing the void and returning with understanding. The social pressures, the expectations, the judgmental eyes, all of it loses its authority. What remains is an unshakable foundation of self-possession, presence, and resilience. This is the quiet power that arises from rock bottom, a power invisible to many but undeniable to the man who has lived it. And so, the paradox is complete. Hitting bottom is not the end, but the beginning. The collapse is not destruction, but a crucible, shaping a man capable of moving through life with clarity, freedom, and strength. The journey through despair reveals that life, even in its harshest moments, carries purpose. Fulfillment is not found in avoiding the fall, but in learning to rise from it, to inhabit the self fully, and to live with intentionality and awareness. In embracing the lessons of rock bottom, the man discovers not only himself, but the deeper currents of life, understanding that surrender, insight, and presence are the true measures of success. If this reflection resonates, take a moment to subscribe for more content like this. Share this video with someone who may need to hear it, and comment with your own experiences or insights. Every comment strengthens the conversation, every share extends the reflection, and every engagement reminds us that even in our lowest moments, life has the power to teach, awaken, and transform. Hitting rock bottom is not the end. It is the beginning of a life lived with clarity, courage, and authenticity.